Hi guys, my name is Amber and I am going to do a video about my miscarriage. A couple of months ago I started watching these videos and it really helped me out with getting through the emotions of my miscarriage, and it made me feel so much less alone in my feelings. I had a miscarriage in May of 2012. My boyfriend and I started dating in February of 2012, and unfortunately we got pregnant pretty quick after that. I think I found out I probably found out like end of March, early April, and when I had my miscarriage in May, I was 12 weeks along. I wrote everything down on a notebook so that I don't forget anything, because there is a lot to it. When I got pregnant, I kind of was resentful towards Philip. I wouldn't say I blamed him, but he was definitely a part of me getting pregnant, and that wasn't, how either of us were raised, Both of us were raised, no sex until you're married. So it was really disappointing on both of our ends that it happened the way it did. Like I said, I was 12 weeks along when I had my miscarriage. In the very beginning of May, we as in me and my aunt, drove to Galveston for my cousin's wedding. We stopped in Fort Worth for a bathroom break. No, we stopped in some city in Texas for a bathroom break, and I noticed that when I wiped, I saw some blood. And I come out of the bathroom, and I feel like I kind of knew what that meant, and I was really freaking out. And my aunt was like, don't freak out, it's okay, like, it happens, especially early on in your pregnancy, blah blah blah. So she kind of cheered me up, and then we went ahead and went to Galveston. My mom was meeting us in Galveston, so I was able to talk to her there and let her know what was going on. And again, she was really encouraging and was like, don't let it freak you out, it happens. So we end up going through our whole vacation. I didn't tell really anybody there, family wise, about what was going on, because I didn't want to freak anyone out, and it was my cousin's wedding, and so I didn't want the attention to be shifted from her to me. So I kind of kept it to myself. I called my doctor. I hadn't had my first appointment yet. I was supposed to go almost directly after my vacation. And my doctor told me, like, don't freak out because it happens, like everyone else was saying. So I continued to bleed only like a tiny bit throughout the whole vacation. And then on the way home is when stuff really started happening. I was cramping really bad on the way home. Unfortunately, my aunt had to drive most of the way back to Kansas because I was hurting so bad. And I told Philip, my boyfriend, what was going on, and he met me at my house late the night that we got home, and I was thinking about going to the hospital, but we chose not to that night. The next morning, I went ahead and took Philip to school and told him that I could just go to the hospital alone, no big deal. That was the worst mistake of my life. So I go to the ER, and I got in really quick. I was really surprised. And the first thing they did was like a pelvic exam, I think is what they call it, where pretty much the doctor got all up in my business. And he said that my cervix, I believe he said my cervix was closed, so if I was going through a miscarriage, it wasn't happening right then. And they got some blood work from me and then sent me to get either an ultrasound or a sonogram. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's a sonogram though, or an ultrasound. I don't know. But obviously they were looking for a heartbeat, and they used like stick and went in vaginally, and she looked around for quite a while. I've never done anything like that before, so I didn't really know what she was looking at. I was kind of curious, like, why I wasn't seeing anything on the monitor, and obviously there was no heartbeat. But she wouldn't tell me anything while we were in there. I had to wait to talk to the doctor. So they wheeled me back to my room, and the doctor came in and let me know that I was having a miscarriage. After the doctor told me I was having a miscarriage, he left the room. And that's when I texted my mom, told her that I was having a miscarriage, same with my boyfriend. I sat in that room alone for a pretty good amount of time. And that was the most alone I've ever felt. I was waiting for him to give me my prescription for my pain meds, and they told me that I was just gonna go ahead and pass it naturally. They didn't even give me the option of a D&C, even though I was 12 weeks along. So I get in my car, and that's when I kind of lose it, and sit in my car and cry for quite a while, and then I went home. Nothing had really happened yet besides the bleeding and a little bit of cramping, like I hadn't passed anything. But I hadn't for a while. I had no idea what happened during a miscarriage. I thought you just bled and that it was pretty painful, like period cramps. So I go home. I let my boss know what was going on, and of course she didn't expect me to go to work. And I ended up staying in bed that full day. And I thought that was it. The next day, I can't remember, I believe that I called in from work and just kind of chilled out, laid in bed all day, but nothing was really happening. Like, you know, I was feeling pretty crampy and I was bleeding a lot, but that was about it. And like I said, I thought that was all that a miscarriage was. The next day, I go ahead and try to go to work. I thought that my miscarriage was over. You know, I bled, I had cramps. I thought that was it. I had no idea what was coming. I go ahead and try to go to work. Ended up being in quite a bit of pain, so I went home. Later on in the day, I thought I was feeling better, and Philip invited me to go to a movie with him and his friend. I was really missing my boyfriend, so I figured I could probably swing it. Halfway through the movie, the pain got absolutely unbearable, so I went ahead and went home, and I had like bled through my jeans and everything. It was awful. So I stayed in bed for the rest of the day. The next day, or I'm sorry, that night, like probably midnight, I woke up and I had awful cramps. And so I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, I might have to go to the emergency room. I'm in so much pain. And she was like, okay, if you need to, just give me a call back and we'll go ahead and go. And so I get up to start cleaning everything up because I had bled everywhere. And while I was in the bathroom getting cleaned up, I was getting these like crazy cramps and like an overwhelming urge to push. I feel like that's probably a lot like what having a baby is like. So So I did, and I didn't really know what my body was doing until I was sitting on the toilet and I dropped like a pretty big piece of tissue. And then I kind of, realized like I'm going to be passing everything that my body just worked to create. And it was so painful. So I passed a few pieces of tissue, and then I feel like I'm going to vomit. So I end up standing in my bathtub with things like falling out of me, pouring out blood, and puking, like bending over and puking into the toilet. After I was done puking, I went ahead and just like ran some water in the bathtub to try to clean everything up, and I just laid there for like an hour, like passing tissue and bleeding. And again, I felt very alone. Like I had no idea any of that was gonna happen. I was trying to like hold my screams from pain because my roommate was in the next room and I didn't want to bother her. So I just sat there and did all that alone. After I had passed everything, I had kind of stopped bleeding. I went ahead and went back to bed. Philip came to see me the next day. I could kind of feel my resentment growing for him because he had no idea what I had been through. I don't even know if I told him. And it didn't feel like he was hurting the way I was hurting, like mentally. Like I don't know, it just didn't feel like he was hurting as bad as I was. And that hurt. Like again, I felt like I was alone in this pain. A couple of weeks went by, or I went to work pretty quick after all of that. I maybe called in like another day and then went ahead and went back. My doctor had me come in and keep getting my blood drawn so they could make sure that like my levels had gone down correctly and that I didn't have any kind of infection from my miscarriage. I think I went once and then I just didn't go back again. Of course, I felt like this miscarriage was totally my fault. But my doctors reassured me that I couldn't have done anything to change it. After that, I didn't really talk about it a whole lot. I would have my random days where I was sad about it, and I had a coworker that had gotten pregnant 2 weeks before I did, so I had to watch her grow in her pregnancy, and I had to watch her have her baby, knowing that, I should have been having my baby around that time. And that was hard to watch. But I never really knew how to grieve. I felt like I was very alone in my feelings. And I was just mad. A couple months ago, I was on YouTube and I came across a miscarriage story. And she kind of just explained everything she went through. And it was a lot like my story. And her husband in this video kind of acted the same way Philip did. Like, she was constantly like, why aren't you more sad about this? Like, why aren't you crying with me? And she realized that they didn't grieve the same way, and that hit me. Like, obviously me and Philip don't grieve the same way, and it made me feel so much better with Philip in my relationship, and about my miscarriage. Like, I didn't feel so alone once I watched that video. And I actually ended up watching quite a few just to see like what their experiences were like. So that was my miscarriage. If you have any questions, I probably didn't cover everything. Feel free to ask and I will definitely reply. Thank you for watching.